Welcome to Live, Love, Engage, the podcast where we share practical advice from a spiritual perspective on how to create a life and business with more impact, influence, and income. I am your host, Gloria Grace Rand, the insightful copywriter and founder of the Love Method. My mission is to help you stop doubting yourself so you can live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically. Namaste and welcome to a live edition of Live, Love, Engage. We are recording this on Facebook. It's also going out on my YouTube channel as well. And I'm delighted to have a guest with us today. Her name is Laura Stack. So first off, before I tell you all about her, I just want to welcome Laura to Live, Love, Engage.
Thank you, Gloria. Appreciate being here.
Well, I appreciate having you. And this is going to be a bit different episode, I think, than we normally have, because it's really about raising awareness to a topic that I wasn't aware of. So let me tell you a little bit about who Laura is. She is the founder and CEO of a nonprofit called Johnny's Ambassadors. And her mission is to educate parents and teens about the dangers of today's high THC marijuana on adolescent brain development, mental illness, and suicide. And she's also written a book about this, which I'm going to talk to her about that as well in a second. But she's really on a mission to, really help parents. The recipient of the Drug Free America Foundation's Moxie Award for protecting youth from substances, as well as the Leadership and Advocacy Award from the National Speakers Association. So I thought we'd start off by you sharing your story about what prompted you to have to start, and I'm saying really have to start this.
Yeah. Nonprofit
that you're doing. Yeah.
Thanks, Gloria. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I would probably say that when most of your listeners hear you read my introduction and hear you say about the harms of today's high-potency marijuana, that many of them said, what's the problem? That's not true. Marijuana's natural. It's harmless. It's a healing herb. It's legal. It's no problem. I used to use it when I was a kid, right? On. And I do want to tell you right from the start that I hear you, that I was the same way. And that is why I'm here. Colorado was the first state to legalize recreational marijuana in 2012. And my son, Johnny, was 12 years old at the time. And when it came out in 2014, he was 14 and was a freshman in high school. And that was when he smoked his first marijuana. Now, I only know that because he told me. We were very close. I was his person. Johnny was a very happy, charming, outgoing, busy young man. He played cross country, ran track. He played the piano and the guitar. He had a brown green belt in karate. We're a Christian family. He was raised in the church. We taught Sunday school for many years. He was extremely intelligent, had a 4.0 GPA, had a scholarship to Colorado State University after getting a perfect SAT score in the math portion. So, just a young man with everything going for him. And I do need to tell you, he didn't have any mental illness. We don't have any mental illness in our family, any history of psychosis. This is a state where Colorado uses a lot of marijuana. And he has a friend who lives down the street who will be nameless, who has, at the time, a big brother who was 18, which in Colorado is the magic age. Because you can go to what we call our pot shop docs. And they're very well known who they are. And they charge you a few $100s, between $300 and $500, depending upon the doctor. And the teens just they have a migraine or a backache or some sort of debilitating condition. These are not the children who actually need medical marijuana, just so you know. And they get their medical marijuana card, and that entitles them to legally walk into any of our dispensaries and buy marijuana products. And then they sell them to their classmates in high school and middle school. Sadly, 1 in 10 of our middle schoolers here in Colorado is addicted to marijuana. And Johnny came back from the party and told me that this friend's big brother had marijuana and that they all wanted to try to get high, and he had used it. Now, I used marijuana when I was in high school. I think many of us did. You know, I'm not prude. I'm not like, wasn't like anti-marijuana. I told Johnny and my other 2 children also, you know, do not use drugs, no substances, no alcohol, no smoking, no marijuana. Like, that was the rule. I didn't use it myself. I didn't like it personally. I used it a couple times in high school. But what I didn't know, and what I said to myself in my head was, oh, thank God, it's just marijuana.
Yeah.
That's where I was so wrong. And I didn't know it. I didn't know I was wrong. I hadn't been in a dispensary since I was in ever. I mean, we got it from, you know, it was ditchweed. I don't even know where we got it. It was
Yeah.
just, you know, and back then, you know, my perception, and I'm 52, was, you know, you had a paper and you put in some grass and it, you know, would have some stems and some seeds, like not real great stuff, you know, and you'd roll it up and you'd smoke a joint. Like, that was what I thought about marijuana. And I thought to myself, oh, you know, I used it. I'm fine. It's just marijuana. Right. Kids will be kids, right?
Yep.
That began a 5-year journey of hell of my son and his addiction to marijuana, which sadly ended by his suicide. In November of 2019, he became extremely paranoid, very delusional. He thought that his phone was listening to him, that his college dorm room was bugged, that the mob was after him. And sadly, he jumped off a 6-story building running away from the mob. So I am on a mission to educate parents about today's marijuana, which I didn't even know for 4 years after he first told me he had tried it, about concentrates and about dabs. I'd never even heard of dabbing. I didn't know what that was, right? Because my mindset was flower. So, Gloria, that's a couple things I want to tell you about today. First, that botanists took the plant, which in our day, okay, so let's go back to when we were young.
The 60s, the 70s.
70s, yep. 80s, 90s,
80s,
yeah, 2000s into 2015. Okay, so if you're more than 25 years old, this is probably news to you. Botanists cultivated the plant so that the THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, delta-9 THC, which is the psychoactive chemical in marijuana that makes you high, that used to be 2% to 5% in the joints that I was thinking of, right? Where you feel like giggly and everything's fine and you go eat Denny's at 2 a.m, right? That's that was my mindset. And now it's very common in Colorado. You can walk into any dispensary. This is not black market. This is not on the street. These are not illegal grows, right? This is legal marijuana, 30% THC in today's marijuana. One grower is even bragging that he's created a 40% THC marijuana flower. Okay, so this is just the plant. So first of all, we have to understand the plant. Anything above 10% is considered high potency. It's very strong. In the UK, they call this skunk. They have the 30% strains in the UK. And in the Netherlands, for example, anything over 10% is illegal. It's considered a narcotic. It's a hard drug, just like cocaine. Wow. So that's the first thing. The second thing that people need to understand is they figured out, these chemists are so smart in the United States, that you can take a plant and you can run butane through it. Now, how someone would figure this out, I have no idea, but you can put butane through it, or propane or ethanol, pick your solvent, and it will break off the trichomes on the non-pollinated female bud of the marijuana breed of the cannabis plant genus. It breaks off the trichome that has the THC, and that raw chemical and solvent kind of get filtered into a tray, and they toss the plant. Okay. So the plant in today's designer marijuana products doesn't even exist. There's nothing natural about the marijuana that's being used now. And then they take this concentrated THC solution that looks like a kind of sticky bronze earwax looking substance, wax, right? And they can further process and distill the concentrated extracted THC into other products. And they tend to name the products by how they look. So there's crumble that looks like a cookie. There's shatter that looks like an amber glass. There's sugar, wax, live rosin. There's crystal. There are myriad newfangled marijuana products. And guess what, Gloria? The minimum these products are 60% THC.
Holy cow.
80% is not uncommon for a concentrate. The oils that the kids are vaping, that they're just telling their mom, but mom, I'm just vaping. Okay, your kid's not vaping nicotine. They're using very potent THC oil right under your nose. I had no idea. These products don't smell. You can't see them. The vapors are dissipated. They hide them in their pockets. So the oils, the shatters, the waxes, the broad term is called dabbing, because you just take a dab. The serving size is like a pinhead, and you touch it to a red hot surface. If you will Google marijuana dab rig, you'll see what I'm talking about, or Google marijuana image shatter or wax. And you'll see, if you have not been into a dispensary in the last 5 years, you have no idea what the kids are out there using. These vapes, these dabs, and then they take the distillates, the really pure oils, and they put them into products. They make suppositories. The boys are going to school high. Oh yeah, Gloria, it's so shocking when you finally. I just remember just going, "What is this? What is this?" I was so, and I consider myself a relatively educated person. I mean, I've got an MBA. I've been in business for 30 years, and I had no idea. And that's what I'm on a mission to do, because I didn't know it's an explanation, but it's not an excuse. I didn't know marijuana was different. It is literally like apples and oranges from when we were using it. It's the difference between cocaine and crack. It's so potent, so strong. Like a joint is about 20 milligrams of THC. A dab, just a dab, is 100 or more milligrams of THC equivalent. A cart, if you buy a cartridge of vape oil, which a gram of that, let's say it's 80% oil. So if you do the math, now you have 800 milligrams in one vape cart. So all day long, they're hitting it. And if there's 200 servings in a cart and 80%, you got 800 grams. That's every time they hit it, they're getting 4 milligrams. And they don't just do these little puffs. They do, right? And it's before school. It's right? Driving to school, sadly, before class, after class, right? All day long, the kids are
Wow.
high. And
That's
what
crazy.
parents don't understand is we have formed brains. So it's not as big of a deal when adults use it. Not that there is no guarantee that marijuana will be harmless for anybody. I have a 51-year-old girlfriend who lives on the East Coast who came and visited here and went to lunch with a friend of ours, hit her dab pen twice, and was in a mental hospital hallucinating for 2 weeks, thinking that the staff were shapeshifters. It's literally crazy. You can't even believe that this is happening. And it is unregulated. It's completely legal. I mean, they get their med card, they're 18. There are 4,000 18-year-olds in Colorado with med cards. And guess how many 17-year-olds there are? 170. Oh, so like overnight, 4,000 of them developed a debilitating chronic condition, right?
Right.
So we are just on a mission to get the word out about how potent the marijuana is, how dangerous it is for our youth until the age of, they're saying about 25 for women, 28 to 30 for men. The brain continues to form.
Right.
And sadly, because the THC molecule mimics a molecule in our bodies called anandamide, which is Sanskrit for pure bliss. It's like the runner's high. It's what makes you feel happy when you feel love, when you're at a party, just feeling good. That's what THC tricks the brain into thinking it's what it is, and it allows it to bind into one of the receptors in our brains called CB1. And in doing so, it blocks our natural anandamide from being able to get in there. So the body goes, oh, well, we have enough. So it stops producing it, which makes the teen need more and more just to feel normal. This is in all of the psychiatrists, handbook they use called the DSM-5. It's called cannabis use disorder, CUD. And it doesn't leave your body for 3 weeks, right? If you get drunk, you drink alcohol, you feel really crappy the next day, you hang over. What's out of your body in 24 hours? THC stays for 3 weeks. And so even kids who go, just use it on the weekends are completely addicted to it. And sadly, because it affects the prefrontal cortex, it shows in MRI studies that it thins the prefrontal cortex in teens who use it. There was a study done of 800 teens between the ages of 14 to 19. And depending upon how many times they'd used marijuana, they had thinning of their prefrontal cortex. CB1 receptors are all over the brain. They're in the amygdala, which normally regulates emotion. So with these huge amounts of potent THC getting in there, now it causes extreme anxiety, acute paranoia, fear, this feeling that people are looking at me and everybody knows me. It's a very specific set of symptoms and a 5-fold increase in psychosis, what's called CIP, cannabis-induced psychosis. And if they get an incident of that, they will be in the hospital because you will want to call 911 because your kid will be saying crazy things, possibly belligerent, possibly violent. We have a board of directors, a scientific advisory board of MDs at Johnny's Ambassadors. And one of our doctors, Karen Randall, is an emergency room physician in Pueblo, Colorado. And she says every day there are teens in her emergency room with episodes of acute psychosis, of intoxication off the charts, sometimes comatose, unconscious, vomiting uncontrollably, acute poisoning in children who eat these edibles. And sadly, if they don't stop using, that psychosis can convert to something more permanent, more schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia-like that they never would have had. It's not genetic. And there's a criteria called the Bradford Hill criteria that has met the definition that marijuana causes psychosis in adolescents who use it later on in life.
Wow.
And sadly, a 7-fold increase in suicide.
Yeah, and I know that's been documented. I mean, really, it's like over the last few years, there's been this incredible
Thousands of
increase,
studies.
yeah,
Yes.
in teen suicide.
Peer-reviewed journal studies, yes.
Yeah. Do you know why these producers have made these concentrates so strong? Have there been
Money.
any research in that? Is it just
Money.
money?
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it's so expensive. They charge so much. Now they don't like to call them potent. They like to call them pure, right? It's all this really terrible messaging because they want you to believe it's just big tobacco all over again, Gloria. It's our products are safe and harmless and natural, and no, they're not addictive, and no, they don't cause psychosis in children, right? As we look the other way, they are laughing at us in Europe. Over here in the US, they said our children are just a big petri dish, and we just have. In Denmark, just came out with a study. 7 million people in Denmark, because it's a closed socialistic country, right? So they can study just the 7 million people in Denmark. And they said definitively that in 1995, they had a 2% incidence of schizophrenia in their population. And that in 2010, when they took the data again, they had an 8% incidence of schizophrenia in their population. Guess what? The only thing that changed? Marijuana was introduced into Denmark, and they removed all the comorbidities such as psychosis in the family, prior mental health, people who are currently depressed, right? So the researchers said it's probably higher, but they said for certain, we know in Denmark that our population has gone from 2 to 8% schizophrenia in that time period because of marijuana. The research is there. The marijuana industry must addict the children because addiction is an adolescent onset disease. Their primary users are 18 to 24. 4%, Gloria, of our users in Colorado buy 65% of the products. Think about that. Wow. 4% of the marijuana users buy 65% of the products. They don't care about the 85-year-old little granny who's eating a gummy for her arthritis every day. Okay, that is not, they need the very addicted, all day, every day, heavy dab, right? High tolerance users who have a complete addiction to this.
Right.
So they are coming after our kids. There is blatant marketing to them in Colorado. I have a collection of ads, social media, posters, flyers, newspaper ads, where they're directly marketing to young people. And because it's legal for adult use, right? Many parents sadly think it's safe. And in the pandemic, sadly, some parents, very well-meaning, have given their children marijuana thinking, oh, they're anxious. Poor babies, I'll give them marijuana. And it makes it worse. Anxiety is actually counterindicated for marijuana.
So what can parents do? What do you recommend? What do they need to do?
Well, the first thing is get educated, right? Whether you go to our website, johnny'sambassadors.org, go to a dispensary, get online, read. I mean, you will be shocked. I will send you photos if you can't, I mean, they're everywhere. Just Google marijuana concentrate image. So do your research, understand why it's a different drug, why it's so potent, why it's so harmful. And then you have to approach your children. What do you know about dabs? If you ask your child, do you know what dabbing is? They will know. And I didn't even know how do you know? Because they all know. They don't really want the parents to know, right? Because they're doing all the oils and the dabs and the edibles and the suppositories and the tampons and the drops and the inhalers and the eye drops and any orifice you can put THC in, the manufacturers have figured out how to put it in.
Wow.
So talk to them, have a conversation around it. If you ever suspect any drug use, drug testing is recommended. They're very inexpensive, reliable THC tests that you can buy on Amazon. What? Don't you trust me? Well, this is a way that I know,
Yeah.
that I can continue to trust you. Always charge their phone in your bedroom overnight. That's where they're getting in trouble. Is at night on Snapchat, on the apps, and in the For Your Eyes Only. That's where it's being sold. And keep those lines of communication open. What do you know about this? Do you know anyone who uses it? Have you used it? I mean, ultimately what we have to do is, get past the drugs are bad, don't do drugs,
Yeah.
They don't respond very well to that. Teach them the science. Talk to them about the changes that happen in their brains. They only get one brain, right?
Yeah.
If they
That's
goof
it.
it up, lowers memory, IQ, motivation, poor outcomes in life. I mean, the list of consequences go on and on and on. And there are no studies that show any benefit to today's high potency THC on teens at all. There are none because they don't exist. But there are thousands, and they can find them on our website that show the negative consequences.
What about can also what about advocacy, talking to our lawmakers, because they're supposed to be there,
We did that.
and the
we did in
FDA
Colorado.
things
We
like
just
that,
passed a
so-
bill.
Okay.
We just passed a bill a few months ago, Colorado House Bill 1317, regulating marijuana concentrates. In fact, most of it just went into effect on January 1st, putting some guardrails in place. We're never going to get the horse back in the barn, right? Marijuana legalization in Colorado is a foregone conclusion. It's not going to be repealed, and we can limit access. We can ensure that 18-year-olds now have to see 2 doctors. We can lower the limits on how much 18-year-olds are allowed to buy. We can put in real-time tracking. So there are all kinds of things that you can do on a legislative level, even when marijuana is legal in your state, because they said, that could never be done in Colorado. Our coalition was led by a woman named Dawn Reinfeld, and she put together students, actual teens to come and testify. Parents like me, all right, medical people, school professionals, healthcare professionals, and we gave 9 hours of testimony on the harms that our families and children have experienced, and it got passed. And they said it couldn't get done, and it did. So you can definitely do some advocacy on your local level as well in terms of access and putting guardrails in place to protect our youth.
Awesome. I just realized I mentioned at the beginning that you also wrote a book about this. Can you tell us just a little briefly about what that?
Well, I mean, after Johnny died, I was still just reeling with what happened. I mean, and then COVID started. It was a horrible time. And my for-profit businesses are all in speaking and training, so they kind of shut down. So I found myself with a lot of grief and a lot of time. And so I just sat down and started writing. I've written 8 books before this, so I know the process. So I wrote 300 pages before I forgot anything about Johnny's life. And I told the entire story, went back, gathered doctor's notes, and I mean, all of the treatments and mental health stays. And, his diagnosis was THC abuse severe. That was his diagnosis. Just going through and detailing for everybody what happened so that they can recognize it. So I wrote The Dangerous Truth About Today's Marijuana, Johnny Stack's Life and Death Story. And it has 176 scientific notations so that people don't think, this is reefer madness, to show the science, the research of the harms of today's very high potency THC and what it does to adolescent brain development, sadly turning it into many mental illnesses and unfortunately suicide. We have right now at Johnny's Ambassadors 196 parents of children with cannabis-induced psychosis currently in the United States. And that's only the ones that know about us.
Yeah.
There are thousands right now of parents whose children are very, very sick as a result of using these dabs.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing. I'm sorry that you had to,
Thank you.
be brought into this in such a way, because
I didn't know, and I don't want anybody else to say I didn't know. I want you to know, and we just cannot have any teens following Johnny's path. We have to get them to stop dabbing.
Absolutely. So, where can someone get some more information? I think you actually did mention, but you have a
Yeah, it's
website that people
all on our
can learn
website,
about it.
johnnysambassadors.org, 2 N's in Johnny, no apostrophe, and 2 S's in ambassadors, johnnysambassadors.org. Everything is there. Everything is free. It's all based on donations from our very generous donors, videos, webinars, toolkits, anything that you need to really get educated. The research is all there. It takes a long time to get through it all. But my email address, laura@johnnysambassadors.org, is on that site too. So feel free to reach out to me if your child is in trouble. We do have a list of providers that we partner with that can hopefully get them some help.
Oh, that's good. Awesome. Well, I have been educated today, and I really appreciate you being on the show to
Thanks,
educate our
Gloria.
audience, and hopefully we can, um, start paying more, number one, paying more attention and really doing the research, as you say, and understanding that
Yes.
we need to make some changes. And so it starts first by talking to our kids, finding out what they're doing, and do that research, because it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
That
And it doesn't affect everyone. Certainly, we don't
Mhm.
say everyone who dabs is going to get mental illness. But you just don't know. There's no test. There's no way of knowing. You don't have to have a genetic predisposition. You don't have to have a current mental illness. Johnny was not depressed or neglected or unloved. He was a victim. He was used. He was very addicted, and he's a child. I mean, their brains are hijacked
That's
anyway when
true.
they're teens,
Yeah.
So we have to get out in front of this as parents and protect our children. And that's our main job, to keep them safe. And this is not safe. There is no safe level of THC in the developing adolescent mind.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for all the work that you're doing. I appreciate you being here
Thank
today
you
on
for
the
having me,
show.
Gloria.
And I will definitely make sure I'll have the website in our show notes as well for those of you who are listening to this. And I just, do be active, be proactive. Don't just
Yes.
assume that everything is okay, because
You may be shocked. Don't ever say, not my kid, because
yeah.
I did too much of that too.
Yeah, that's true. It's even the brightest kids, because they like to experiment,
They all
and there's
do.
peer pressure, and
Yeah.
all of this stuff plays
They have to be ready,
into
or
it.
they're going to go to that first high school party and someone's going to say, here, hit this. And they need
Yeah.
to know what that
What
is and good refusal skills. So that's what
Yeah,
you have to teach them.
absolutely. Who knew that we'd have to be, longing for the good old days when it was just a joint to smoke, you know?
Just a weed. Yeah. No more
Yeah,
of that. That's out the door.
great.
You
All
can't
right,
even buy that anymore. It just doesn't exist.
crazy. All right. Well, thank you again for being here, and thank all of you for watching and who have been watching live on Facebook and on YouTube. And for those of you listening, I will let you know that starting next Wednesday, I'm actually going to be moving the time when I do these live recordings. We're going to be doing it at 11 o'clock in the morning. Um, because thankfully the internet behaved itself, but a lot of times it doesn't behave itself in the evening. So I thought I'm going to move it up earlier in the day to make it better. And if you join us next week, I'm going to have, actually, my guest is going to be Tasha Chen, who is the founder of the Science of Getting Rich Academy, and she has a new book out called Deservingness. Read, and it's awesome, and it's about helping you to be able to get what you want. So until next time, as always, I encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.